Okay, so I'm going to share. Thank you, everyone, actually, for coming along, especially on such a lovely, glorious, sunny evening. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate everybody's interest in it and a lot of enthusiasm that we've had. Now, I'm just looking for my, there we go, the PowerPoint. I'm going to share my screen for this. So I've got a few PowerPoint slides just to sort of show you what I'm going to be talking about, and about mainly I'm going to be actually demonstrating the program. So, oops. Can you see that okay? Is that visible to everyone?
It's fine. Yeah. It's good.
So that's all the front page for the DARA. That's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to talk about the benefits of the program. Then I'm going to do a demonstration. That's going to be the main part of it. And there's an awful lot of things that I want to point out. So if I'm going too fast or anything, please let me know. And if you've got any questions at the end or during it, just let me know. Happy to answer any questions. And I'll be talking about when and how you can sign up for DARA because it's going to be ready very, very, very soon. We're so excited about this. The main things, one of the reasons that DARA was produced was because I had these experiences that I thought writing up a SAS report was really time consuming. I was working with a lot of associates, and there's always a risk that people are going to make little mistakes. There's mistakes that I've made over time that I thought, how can we avoid that sort of a mistake? And just this thing about keeping up with all the admin, all the kind of SAS guidance. And a lot of us do keep up with it, but there's always that niggling feeling in your head, well, what if I've missed something? So I think DARA is designed to sort of help in these areas. That was the point of it, really. We've done a lot of focus groups, had a lot of demonstrations, and we've had really, really positive feedback. So that's the kind of things that people have been saying that are sort of people that are quite key in the areas of dyslexia and SPLD assessment. So I'm going to talk about what DARA does. I'm also going to talk about what it doesn't do, which is a very key thing as well, and really how it can keep your quality high at the same time as saving you time. So I think at that point, I'm going to start to demonstrate DARA. So if I stop sharing that, I'm going to share a different screen now. Let's see. So this is into the DARA program. Can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. So when you first go into the DARA program, and I've kind of bypassed that step, what you do is you sign in and then you create a profile. And in the profile, I can probably show you this here actually. Let's see, can I show you in the, if I go, yeah, I'm not sure if I can do it on this particular, because this is a test program that I've got all my actual reports on a completely different one because I don't want anyone seeing them when I'm doing a demonstration. But basically you fill in all your details, you know, your APC number or your HCPC number, your name, your contact details, and that is the thing that allows DARA to complete that cover page that's needed on your front page. Now I've done this one just as an example. So on the cover page, the front of the thing will have all of your details that you've already keyed in, and then you fill in the details for the person that you're working with. So I've just made up this person. You have to put something like that for the address or it won't go to the next page. What you can see there is that you put the assessment date in there. You can put more than one date if you want. I actually did one today that had gone on to 2 days, and we had to have 2 assessment dates in there. But this one I'm only going to put one in, and I'm just going to put today. So I did this assessment today. And when you have that date and you key in the person's date of birth down here, at this point, DARA knows what age that person is that you're assessing. So one of the many, many features that prevents people making mistakes is that DARA now knows if you're trying to enter a standard score when the person is younger or older than the threshold for that battery of tests, because all that information is already fed into DARA, so it's kind of intelligent in that sense of helping people, but not actually adding to what it's not creating text, but it's helping. So what you'll see here is you can put a preferred title. I mainly work with adults, so I have them referred to as Mr. So-and-so or Dr. So-and-so because that's what they want. So if I put Mr., then I've just put Z for a last name. When the report comes out, it will refer to him as Mr. Z. Now, if I took that out and just put Lucas Z, it will refer to him throughout as Lucas. And you can change that. If the person, you can sort of decide in advance or ask, obviously you're going to ask the person at the time, what would you prefer to be on your report? You can also put the preferred pronoun and including the they, them pronoun, which is quite useful. And that's your that's your cover page. I'm going to save the changes there, and that gets us into the next bit, which is report options. So this page on report options is the bit where you can register the choices that you have made that SASC allows you to make. So I'm talking at the moment about the post-16 type of format. We don't have the new report format in there yet, but as soon as DARA goes live, that is what we're going to be working on as a priority. So the principles are much the same. There's very few differences in terms of how this works. So this is reminding me that that is the one that I selected, just in case I might have selected the pre-16 by mistake, and I can just double check that. What you'll see is that it automatically provides you with a randomized password. So you can use that password, or you can just make up your own password. So for example, I might want to put, what did we say his name is? LZ. I think that was his date of birth, 1996. So that's that, because I've got my own way of creating passwords, and that way I'm going to remember that password. So here's a bit where you can say whether it was remote, face-to-face, or both. I do most of my assessments remotely, so I'm going to tick that one. The SAS gives you that choice of which of the range descriptors you want to use, option A or option B. So you can select, I use A. I know a lot of people prefer B. And some people like to vary it according to maybe what age group they're working with or what the scores are coming out like. So that's where you can select that. And that will automatically, when you put a score into DARA, it will calculate whether that score is in the average range, the mid-average range, the high average range, the low range, and it will put that into the table at the end. So you don't have to think about all of that either. There's a bit in Appendix 1 where you describe the statistical terms that you've used. And this is where you can tick which ones you've used. Now, obviously, at this part of an assessment, when the assessment hasn't taken place yet, or I'm still writing it up, I know I'm going to be talking about confidence intervals, so I can key that. And I know I'll be talking about standard scores because we can't have a report without them. But later on, I might end up putting something in. I might end up putting percentiles if the person's got a really high score and it's something we want to celebrate. Or I might talk about statistical significance. So that's where I can go back to that and change that at any point. And also later on, what I can do is I can decide if there is a definition that I think applies to this person. So for instance, in Scotland, we use this Scottish Working Definition of Dyslexia, which came out after the Delphi one and is informed by the Delphi one. Most of us now in England are going to be using the Delphi definition, but all of these definitions are ones that are currently okay to use, according to SASC. If a definition is no longer valid, it will just be removed from the program. So you wouldn't have that opportunity. If a new definition comes out, it will go in there. So you don't need to worry about how to reference it. You don't need to worry about the exact wording because it will come from the source. So that's another thing not to worry about. So the other thing is sometimes I'm doing an assessment and there is no diagnosis. I'm a psychologist, so we're not always looking specifically for something like dyslexia. So if I want to, I don't want to say that there's any sort of definition, I can just put page intentionally blank so that when that appendix comes up, It does just got nothing in it. Like people might think, oh, they've forgotten to put a definition in here. So we put that in but what we're trying to do in DARA, and what we are doing is covering all the different options that may come up. I think because I've done assessments for so long, you get quite aware of, oh, what about this? And how about that? What about that situation? So we're trying to deal with every single situation that could come up. So if I save that, and I love this bit, the scores. I'm going to show you how the scores work. So imagine this is before I've done the assessment for the person. What I would be doing beforehand is I'd be filling in all that background information into the paragraphs that I'll show you further down. I know that I'm going to be using the dash, and this person is age 30, and I know I'm not going to be keying in a score for the dash, so I can already add the dash in here. So this has saved the test that I use a lot, and it'll do that for you as well. So if I do that dash, it comes up. Now, this is another thing. It's straight away telling me that these tests fall outside of that person's age range. But that's okay because I'm using it qualitatively. So I'm going to do that. And then the dash has come up here on my little score thing. And if I look there, because that person is outside the age range, it's giving me that opportunity to say I'm doing that qualitatively, and I'm going to talk about that qualitatively. And I can save that change. And now DARA knows that that test has been administered, and that means that reference will appear in the appendix at the end. Another one that I like to do when I'm working with older adults is I use the GORT. I just use a passage from the GORT and ask them to read it aloud, just for completeness. So if I put that, I'll actually use this for silent reading. But anyway, it doesn't matter. If I can say I want to do that qualitatively, getting them to read something. And this, we also have it built in so that you can tick. If a test has different options, a Form A, a Form B, a blue form, a green form, anything like that, you can just tick whichever one you used. And I know when I used to do work in schools, quite often I would have to switch to the different one because you discover that they had just the week before been given the Towery or the C-top using a different version of their form. So they all will switch to the different one. So, and then it was a case of having to remember to change your the actual report that wouldn't necessarily go with the template anymore. So I can save that. So now I've got some scores in there already. Now, if we imagine we've done, I'm kind of doing things in slightly the wrong order just to because I'm going in the order of these rather than the order you would do an assessment. But supposing we're in the midst of the assessment now, and I have administered, let's see, what should we say? Say I have done some COD tests. There we go. And we see we don't have that red barrier, so we know that that's okay. We are within the right age range for that. So with the TOD, I'm going to just put a few in here. This is just to illustrate something else. These are tests that I do use a lot. So say we've got rapid letter naming and rapid number naming. So I'm going to put, shall I say, 70 and 80 for that. Oops. And what you might have noticed, it's automatically put the confidence intervals in for you. So whenever we can get DARA to do that, we can do that. So for instance, with Todd, there's a thing at the bottom of the scores thing that says no matter what age the person is, the confidence interval for that is plus or minus 8. So we can key that into the whole program because it doesn't matter what age the person is. There are other tests where that's just not possible. And what we're doing is, well, what I'm doing at the moment is going through all the tests to see where that's possible. So I know it will be with the C-top, the dash, the Towery. I've already put a few other ones in. So that will be there whenever we can do that. Now, what you'll see with these are all of the tests that are in the TOD. And for every battery, there is every single test in that battery. And the reason for that is that although there may be tests that at the moment SASC doesn't approve of being, subtests being used, that may change at a later point. So we're making it sort of future-proof. So every single test in that battery is in there. So that's why it gets so long. And you'll find if you want to put in a composite score, you've got to scroll down. Then we've got the group scores. And with these two speed scores, I can get a composite score for rapid automatized naming. So I'm going to put that. There we go. And I know that's plus or minus 3. So that's automatically done that for me. So all I want to do now is just make sure that information is saved. So I'm going to save that. And I'm just going to show you one more score. If I add results, update Woodcock. So you can see there, it's got all the Woodcock things. It's got the new Woodcock Johnson 5, which was a joy putting that one in, I have to say. So if I can just select one of these and I can put a test in from that. I'm trying to remember where say that's the equivalent of the one that I use in the Woodcock Johnson 4. So just imagine the person gets 85 for that. You probably know that those of you who use the Woodcock Johnson is it provides you with the score and the confidence interval. So you have to just copy that from the report that they've given you. And so you'd key that in manually. So say that might be I don't know, 75 to 95, because that's what the Woodcock Johnson report has told you. So no matter how you're writing an assessment, if you're using Woodcock Johnson, you get that report comes out, and then you're always going to have to transfer the scores into your own version of the report. So we're actually
I need to watch this first.
We're in discussions with Woodcock Johnson.
If you're in the bath, you can watch it in the bath.
Has someone got their
On your bath?
Somebody's got their
microphone on?
The boys need showers.
Yeah, if I've lost my train of thought there. Yeah, we're having discussions with Woodcock Johnson to look at ways in which it may be possible in the future that when you get your scores from Woodcock Johnson, it would automatically go into DARA. And they're quite interested in that as a possibility. So that's quite exciting. So you can see how this could really save a lot of time and also could save a lot of mistakes. Actually, something else I wanted to show you there. If I put, no, it's not going to work with that one. It'll work with a Todd.
Can everyone still see Jenny's screen? Siraj, can you still see Jenny's screen?
Yes, I
Is it-
can. Yeah.
All right, can you see it okay, Katrina?
Yeah.
No, I don't know what I've done.
Oh dear. Oh, I wonder why that is.
I can see it still.
Right. I'm going to scroll down just in the Todd. If I put something like that, it's immediately thinking that doesn't look right, that score. I might have meant to put 77 and I haven't clicked that the second time. So it's going to give little alerts if something looks wrong. And the other thing about the scoring is for every single test, even if the person is within the age range of that test, we might sometimes still want to use a test qualitatively. So for instance, you might start a test and then there's a big interruption, the test can't be completed, or there's various different reasons. So what you can do in that case is you can just tick that, and that means it's not expecting these to come in, but it still will know that you've administered that test. And that is important when it comes to the appendices at the end, because DARA produces all these appendices for you.
Suzanne's just asking whether or not you've got Wyatt 3 on there, and do the weighted scores, have they been converted to standard scores?
Nothing is converted to standard scores. We did actually have that capacity before, but there was a lot of people saying that they found that very confusing, and the Wyatt 3 is in there. So if I'm going to just show you that. If I save these changes and if I add the results, because I use the Wyatt 3 as well. Oops. There we go, Wyatt 3. They're all in there. So you can see all of the Wyatt 3 tests and the composite scores. So yeah, Wyatt 3 is in there.
So you have to put in the standard score.
You have to put in the standard score. Yeah. We did able to put a scaled score up to a standard score, But people were finding that confusing because people who go straight to the standard score and they don't need to worry about it, they were putting that in and then it was rejecting it because it thought it was far too big a score. So because I was expecting a standard score.
But I use Q Global and it gives you it works it out for you.
Yeah, and I think more and more tests that are coming out now, they're not giving a scaled score anymore. I think that is just going to be going out anyway. So that is your first. That's the whole kind of thing with the scoring, which I love it. I mean, it took absolutely forever to get all these tests in, but I think it's been worth it. If I show you other features, here we go, the overview. So you're starting to write up the report here. Now, every single section there, down on the left, that is all the headings in the order that they should appear in the format that you're using. So obviously the headings are going to be different for the new report format, and they're slightly different, as you probably know, for the under 16 format, which I used to find quite difficult because I did under 16 and over 16 assessments, and it's this thing about the same information in a very slightly different order, not different enough for you to but I think it wasn't dramatically different enough that you could have two entirely different templates. Well, I had to have different templates, but it just, I found that quite hard to follow. So what you've got here, every time you open a section like that, or back to the overview, what you've got up here is that is the word for word SASC guidance on that section, word for word. And if SASC have used italics, it's in italics. And if you've used bold, it's in bold. If you've used bullet points, it is word for word. And it's not just the sort of SASC guidance, it includes these additional guidance notes as well that came along with the SASC guidance. And in the new report format, it will have hyperlinks that take you to all the individual guidance notes. There are 94 of them. So we have ways of collapsing that information so you can find everything that you want right in front of you, but it's not going to take up the entire screen, because I find looking at the SASC guidance on its own it's very lengthy to work through. So it's all that's I still find sometimes I want to double check, is this the section where I should be putting this in here, and I can double check up there. Now, the other thing that we have, that's the SASC guidance. There's also a way of putting your own information in there that you can store, and that is done using presets. So I have already, here's one I prepared earlier. There's a preset. If I do that, and I've only stored one in this sample one, but I've got pages and pages of them in my own version of it. So I can select that post 16 overview, and it's going to actually, I'm gonna change that slightly so that it actually does what it's supposed to do. If I go into this one, I'm going to actually write a preset so you can see how this whole preset thing works. So in order to do a preset, you go into this little cog here, and we can see manage presets. That's the bit where you edit your profile that I was talking about before. There you go, manage presets. And I want to do a new preset. And I'm going to call this one post 16. Post 16 referral. And then when I'm looking for it, I know that that's exactly where I'm going to find it. So this is quite terrific, I think, because you can set a preset that will change according to the name and the preferred pronoun of that person. So if I put here, I'm going to put so-and-so was referred for an assessment by, so I put preferred name was and I'll just put that because I can fill that in later. And then I might want to put something like he or she or they. So I'm going to pick that because it's starting a sentence. He, she, they reported that. And I want he, she, they, but I don't want that capital. He, she, they was having with. That's going to cover a lot of options for me. So I'll save that. as a preset. Now, if we go back into the person's report, this is how we go back if we click on the DARA icon there, get back to his report, have a look at the referral, and insert that preset. You see what it's done? It's changed the preferred name to Mr. Z. If it had been Lucas, it would have said Lucas was referred. And if it had been a she, somebody who used the she pronoun, it would have said she reported that she was having difficulties with. So this means that your preset is kind of multifunctional and you don't need to worry about remembering to change the pronouns. So that's another neat thing. I also use the presets for other reasons. Sometimes I want to put myself a little reminder that about something that I want to put in that section. So maybe if it's something that doesn't make a lot of sense to me why that is in there, I'll put a preset, and maybe at the start of that I'll put something like, and then some note, such and such should be mentioned here. And then when I'm writing it, that'll come into the preset, and then I'll just delete it when I'm writing up that person's notes. So I can use it for little reminders. I was talking to Katrina about, if you want to refer to the definition that you're working from when you're talking about the diagnostic outcome, what you could do is you could have within your preset text, you could have the entire definition that it would get pasted across, and then you can read that as you're writing your thing, and then you can delete it at the end. So you can use the presets quite creatively to help you in the way that the things that you want reminded of. So every single section has got this. It's got the SASC guidance and that opportunity to create your own presets. And that's really, really helpful the more experience you get, because you can also, what I do is recommendations is I've got a big bank of recommendations, and I put them all into the presets. The whole lot gets transferred across, and then I delete the ones that I don't think are relevant for that person, and I'll add other ones in if I think, oh, they would really benefit from this. So it's very targeted to the individual. And that's one of the things I put on the slide was, what does DARA not do? It doesn't create any of this text for you. So nobody needs to worry about their report looking like it's AI generated, because it's absolutely not. The assessor has to key in all of that text. The only help that DARA will give is you could create your own preset information and use that to guide yourself, or as a starting point. But it means that every report that you write actually sounds like you have written it, because you have written it. It doesn't read like a report that a computer has generated, which you do see on some sites that produce reports just automatically. So that's all these sections. They are all the very same in principle. And obviously when we have the new report format in there, you will be able to change the order of the three sections that we are allowed to change the order of. And the other thing I should say as well is that as well as the new report format, we're working on a workplace needs assessment format as well. So that's a separate one that is not to do with SASC, but it's one that a lot of people are working on. So the next interesting bit, if we look at this main body of the report, this is where we report the findings. And I think I'll go there as an example. So we've got that, we can put presets in. We could have a little bit of blurb that starts off that section that we're always going to use, or we could have some blurb that is quite changeable and we can sort of delete it or whatever according to what we want to do. But what you'll notice here is two more buttons here. What this does is, based on the scores that you put in at the start, it'll give you a little reminder. So that's reminding me that I did that test and that test. That was a very low score and that was a below average score. So when I'm writing about that, I can just double check what were the tests that I did exactly, and that will tell me what my composite score was.
That's useful.
Yeah, and it's because sometimes it is quite useful. Also, if I look there and one of them isn't there, I think, oh, I didn't write that score down because I definitely did the rapid letter naming and the number and letter naming, so I can go back into the score thing and make sure I put that score in. So that's useful from that point of view. So you've done all this, you've done your write-up. You know, like I say, I do all the background information first. So before I've even seen the person, I've filled in all of that. And I've filled in obviously their date of birth, their address, as much as I possibly can. I do a lot of filling it in as we're working, because while they're working on maybe writing a 15-minute piece of writing, I'm kind of filling in all sorts of information and taking notes. So by the end of the assessment, I've got a lot of information in there. I do the scoring as I go along as much as I can. I put the scoring in. So by the end of the assessment, I've actually, maybe not in terms of the thinking element, but I've done a large proportion of the writing of the report is already done. And I think psychologically that's a nice feeling, to think you're not just going to a blank report thinking, oh, you know, that thing when a report is hanging over you that needs written,
Yeah.
or even worse if you've got a whole bunch of them hanging over you. So if I scroll down here, supposing we're right at the end, I just hit generate report. I've got 2 report formats in here. You create your own report format. So the full report has absolutely everything in it that a full report should have. I've created that executive summary report because I do that for people in the workplace. And there are training videos that show you how to create these different report formats. So I won't go into that just now because that would take a little bit of time. But if I just click that, this is now giving me a scrollable copy of what we've got so far, which is kind of limited because I haven't put in an awful lot of text. It's going to give me all the headings, but I didn't put any text in. So there we go. If I just scroll through there, and what it should do. There's your appendix 1. That was the 2 things that I ticked: confidence intervals and standard score. These are the scores that I keyed in. I didn't key in very many, but you can see how that works, and it's very neat and easy to read. I didn't put a definition in, so it's not got anything in there. You see it's got the dash, so it's got all the descriptors for the test. These are all taken from the manuals. So I've gone through every single manual to say, what do they say this test involves? And if it's got some vocabulary in it that is a bit technical, like prosody or something like that, I've put in brackets what that means. So that should save people having to do that bit of everything. So if you're using a new set of tests, you don't need to worry about doing all that stuff about describing what's in the tests. So that is coming up automatically, all these references for the ones that we ticked saying that we had done. And that's it does that by default because we all should be using that visual difficulty screening questionnaire. But you can add more in there just by using a preset. That's what I do. And then there's that at the bottom. So you can see there it's scrollable. We can have a good look at that. If we see something that doesn't look right, what we then do is we can just go back into here and change whatever it is we think doesn't look right. And then we can do the download again, download the report, and so on. And so we can keep tinkering with that. The other thing that we can do, I scroll down here, is I can download that and print it out. It's got a draft copy on every single page. This is not to send to anyone, absolutely not. But if you want to just have a good look at something and see how it's all done, that's what I was meaning. You don't need to pay for anything until you're ready to actually publish a report. Now, when you hit publish report, that is when it asks you for a payment. And you can see there that the prices are in there now. So that's what's going to be £31 for each report, or you can get discounts if you buy a batch of 10 or a batch of 5. So you can tick whichever one of these is relevant. And then at that point, you can then print off the report. Now, if you pay for a report and you want to get a summary report as well, you can go back to formats. That's all paid for. It's however many versions of a report you want that person to have, that's all paid for within that one payment. You don't pay extra for a summary report or anything like that. So what I wanted to show you next was just that it's a lot of information in there to take in. And if I just go into the you can see that we've got these training videos on the website. And what I've done is I've tried to break it up into lots of little videos rather than people having, you can obviously look at these recordings of the demonstrations and they're about an hour long, but you can look down here at these how-to videos. Now, what at the moment, the person who does the videos is working on updating them. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So it might, I'm just looking to see the length of some of these. If I did that, it'll just give you a little bit of an idea.
In this video, we'll show you how DARA can help you to produce a summary version of your report. First, click the cog to the top right of your screen. Under Profile, click Global Report Settings. Next, scroll down to Summary Report Options. You can now give your summary a title that will appear on the cover page. For example, in an adult report, this might be Executive Summary. Then, you can select the information you would like to appear on the cover page. Next, go through the report sections one by clicking on the headings on the navigation list on the left. At the bottom of each section, you can tick a box to indicate whether or not you would like that section to appear in your summary report. Remember to go through the 5 appendices too. Once you have done that for all the sections, DARA knows what the summary report should include, and this information will be stored for your future use.
So
And that's it. This feature will save you a lot of time when completing summary reports.
Jenny,
I
did you show a video then?
Yeah, did you not see it?
No, it's still on the oh sorry.
Oh, sorry. Did you just have me sitting smirking at the screen?
No, I could hear it. Could hear it.
Oh,
See the video.
yeah. Oh, I don't know why that didn't. Yeah, I'm sorry that didn't show, but there's a little. It kind of shows you a visual of the things I was showing you and points these things out. So, anybody who wants to just double check anything, I'm going to stop sharing that. Anybody who wants to double check anything, if you go onto the Disguise Diagnostics website and scroll at the bottom, you can look at there's about 6 videos that sort of go through some of the things that I've gone through there. And I think the only other thing that I wanted to do was just to quickly show, so I'm going to get that. I'm going to quickly show a couple of draft redacted reports that are using the new report format and one that is using the workplace needs assessment format. So my screen is going a bit funny here. Let's see. There we go. So I'm going to share this. So this just to give you a very, very rough idea. This is a report. So Katrina's been working using the new report format. It's not ready for people yet, but this gives you just a little bit of an idea. Automatically produces a contents page, automatically numbers it. And if you, as you add the sections in, it keeps that up to date. And you can see that's how it comes out with all of the headings, and that's text that Katrina's put in that's that's not a real person. So that gives you an idea for the new report format. I'm going to show you one. If I stop sharing that, I'll quickly show you one that has a
I'm a bit more confident about the needs assessment report I was fiddling about with.
The other thing that I should say, in fact, I'm going to share my screen at this point. Let's see if I share that now. And actually, what I need to do first is make sure I've got the right. Zoom. Everything has that password on it. So when you download something, you've got to use that password. So I'm putting in the password that Katrina gave me for that report, and that's a workplace needs report.
Yeah, cover sheet.
The front page is still using the one that we've got. We've still got to get the different front sheets on, but that gives you, these are the different headings. So Katrina does these workplace assessments and also teaches people how to do them, and that is the headings that you need for that sort of a report. So you can see how DARA is quite adaptable for using for different purposes. So if I stop sharing that, and then the only other thing I was going to do was just go back into the PowerPoint. And I'll share that again. So yeah, that's what I was talking about, what DARA does. What it doesn't do specifically, it doesn't create any of the text. So I mean, SASC would not approve of it if DARA produced any of the text. So it doesn't. It leaves all the kind of thinking work up to the assessor. And what I like myself is that because I'm not having to concentrate on a lot of the little picky admin things, that I can really focus on the analytic bit. And that's the bit that I really, really like. That's the interesting part of it. And I think you can, personally, I think I can do a better quality assessment when I'm using DARA. I've been using it for years for myself.
Wow.
It's just taken a long time to get it to this stage that other people can use it. Because if changes needed to be made, I could just tinker away and do them manually. But so that's that. So this basically, I do think it's user friendly. We've had a lot of feedback and people using it and having a shot. I've had people using it in the past who are working with me up in Scotland. It definitely saves time. I think it saves about 1 or 2 hours for a SASC report for each report that you're writing up. And that means there's scope to do more assessments. So I do think if you did something like 3 or 4 assessments in a month, you probably could do 5 or 6 if you're using DARA. So it can generate more income, and so it can, to that extent, it can help to pay for itself. Whoops. Definitely reduces mistakes, because when you put these scores in, that's the only time you ever put the score in, so that same score is going to be appearing, the same descriptor is going to be appearing wherever you talk about it. And like I say, it frees you up to do that analysis, and it breaks the task into manageable steps, so it's not such a chore. And when I'm doing assessments with adults, that's one of the things that I'm always recommending is, if you've got something complicated to do, break it down into manageable steps. Don't try and do the whole thing all at once. And that's the advice that I think would be helpful for most people. And I think a lot of people who do assessments do have a kind of neurodiverse way of thinking. And so I think it's also quite accessible for, just generally accessible for people that have different ways of working. So like I said, all the recommendations are there exactly where you need them in a usable format. And every time you open DARA, you are going to see the latest guidance. So if a test is removed from DARA, that test will not be there available for you to use to put scores in if it's not on the SASC list anymore. And we will give alerts to people that is going to happen. And that scope for incorporating your own notes. I think if we didn't have that, it would be very hard to sort of progress with DARA. We can develop reports that really look like they're our reports the way that we write them, because we can have that preset text to draw on. So that's a link if you haven't already signed up to DARA to be on the mailing list. And I'll just leave that for a moment or two. And that's obviously the website. You can get all the information. If you go into the Disguised Diagnostics website, there is masses of information on DARA now. We're getting that, building that up a lot. What we're currently working on is a whole series of frequently asked questions, so that people, you know, that you're not just left wondering what happens here and what happens there. And yeah, that's another way of joining our mailing list. And I think, yeah.
So Jenny, what a few people have put things on the chat box. So Lorraine's saying yes, she uses Q Global to score Y at 3. Yeah, Lorraine was saying about the training video, but we'll get that out to you. Can we put the report onto different headed paper?
What you can do at the moment, you would get the DARA logo at the top. You can select to have no logo at the top. And what we are working on coming quite soon, and this is in the frequently asked questions, is that people can put their own logo at the top. So if would that be what you mean by headed paper?
Or could you print it off with somebody's logo at the top? So it printed out with the...
I'm not sure how that would work out.
No,
I think that might be tricky because it comes out as a PDF, so I'm not sure that would be.
But in time,
Not sure.
we'll have that facility.
But people will in time be able to put their own logos in there. That is something that we're working towards. Yeah, definitely.
And that is what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, there is a bit where, I mean, currently it's got the DARA logo, but you can, if you don't want the DARA logo, you can just have no logo, and then at some point people will be able to put their own logos on. Okay. Yeah,
but no logo is okay.
Yeah,
that's good. Suzanne's saying her dyspraxic mind thinks it's great. I've got dyspraxic mind as well, and it's that ability to just nip in and out and just change things, and it's just really nice. Sorry, Suzanne.
No, I just whenever I sit down to write a report, I'm going, okay, I know this, but which part goes where?
Oh, I know.
And when every time they change the report format, I'm going,
I
know, and it's that I've got folders and folders. This is my folder for the old format, and I keep that right next to me so that I can just double check. And sometimes sometimes you get a little blank and you think, oh, where do I write about this? Something that's a little bit unusual. So yeah, I think it's really useful from that point of view.
I'm coming up to an APC renewal. I was hoping this would be ready, but no chance.
Well, you can do your APC renewal on the old report format. That's not a problem.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
You can do your APC renewal on the old report format, right up to
because it's valid until December this year. So a lot of people are going to be using it right up to that point.
And actually, as a previous APC reviewer, I would say do it on the old report format. Don't try and do one on the new report format and get yourself into a pickle.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And obviously, you sometimes think, okay, all right, should I do this test? And what am I looking for here? And getting yourself into a muddle with it. And how, like with oftentimes with people, I will do like a numeracy test with them just to check their math, even though